What I'd like to talk about in my 15-minute section is Aphid and virus yellows control. So many of you would have been aware of the decision that was taken by government on the 23rd of January this year. We had notification from the Minister that we would not be using cruiser in 2025. I don't really want to over-elaborate the situation because actually we did pass on 4 of the 5 criteria, and with the application that had gone in, the environmental fate element is the one that tripped us up, and hence why we are not using it. But what I want to do this morning is think about what we can do to minimise that risk and make sure that virus yellows is not a problem in the crop as we go forward. So my key message from this morning is what can you do in the next few weeks to make sure that we don't have aphids coming into the crop and ultimately spread virus yellows. So hence why I have my trusty wheelbarrow and some beet in the top of it, because what it's all about is managing hygiene on farm. And I know there's still beet in the ground and will be as the factories are open, Newark factories open until March. But anything that you can do to make sure that beet is delivered on time, but also make sure you minimise the risk of any tops or anything like that. If you've got the opportunity to plough down, if you're in a high-risk situation, or if you've got spoilage heaps or anything that potentially has sprouts on it that could harbour both the aphids and virus. But also you've got to remember these days we have to think about other issues like beet moth and Cercospora and downy mildew as well. So it's about minimising that risk. And also what was fascinating in this sample here that the team got me is, I know you've heard, George, about cover crops and everything else, and cover crops do work and have lots of benefits, but also some of the species within those mixes can be, particularly the brassicas can host the aphids. And we also know 1 or 2 other species, particularly things like Phacelia, can host the viruses. So you both bearing that in mind and think about on-farm strategy about taking it out as soon as you can to minimise that risk. Now, having said that, what we are picking up from the Rothamsted team, so at the moment we are keeping a very close eye on the weather. The weather that we've had in January and February 2025 is very different to 12 months ago. And at the moment, I would say the mean temperature up until the first few days of February is around about 3.5 degrees. That is at least 2 degrees colder than 12 months ago. And why that is so significant to the story that we're telling this morning is that potentially means the first aphids are going to arrive in sugar beet in the middle of May. That is a game changer if that actually comes off, because last year we got the first aphids coming into beet in the 3rd week in March. And if we're going to have a true epidemic situation and an impact from aphids and ultimately virus yellows, the earlier those aphids arrive in the crop, the smaller the plant, the greater the chance for virus infection and the greater challenges that's going to cause you if you're applying sprays to minimise it, because no one likes spraying for aphids once they've found them, but no one likes spraying small beet. And no one certainly likes putting it on a cotyledon, because my phone will often start ringing or get an email and saying, Mark, sprays don't work. That's because you've got such a small target and you're getting very little on it, and you've got potentially a rebuild of the aphid population very quickly on a day-by-day basis. So the good news at the moment is, if it stays as it is at the moment, from everything that we've had so far, as I said, still got 17 days of forecast weather, but just looking at it keeps changing. I know we're keeping an eye on the weather every moment. It looks like that will potentially hold, and that's positive. If it comes back a little bit, it won't make a big difference, because ultimately, buying that time, and that ensures that the plants will probably be at the 6, 8, or even 10 true leaf stage. And we all know once we get to that stage, you got a bigger target if you do need to spray, but also you get that mature plant resistance starting to kick in as well, and that is fundamental. The beet starts to look after itself. The other real positive from that cold weather is we've had temperatures down to -9 in various areas, particularly in the Newark factory area. Although I am conscious that some of you have had snow, and sometimes that tempers the cold weather because it acts as an insulation blanket and the aphids can be protected. But yeah, clearly that will have helped, although I was in the garden at the weekend, just doing a bit of tidying up, and I did have a look at some of my ornamentals, and I did find aphids. They were by the house, so they were sheltered and protected and would not have been exposed to the same level. But it just is a little bit of a warning that, I know that they weren't mysis, they were probably the Charlotte aphid, but it just shows you, hence why hygiene is important, because that's the sort of place that they will overwinter to get through, so taking out that. So when it comes into the season, what can we do to make sure that you're up to speed and can react accordingly to minimise the impact? So, as in any other year, the BBRO will have its monitoring programme. Alistair will demonstrate some of that at coffee with the advanced monitoring state. So we'll have the yellow water pans that will go out. As I said, we'll probably wait till we get the official first flight data from the Rothamsted team. We will probably put those out in late April, which is probably 3 weeks later than last year. And in addition to that, we'll do all the assessments on the ground, keeping an eye on with colleagues from British Sugar, agronomists, growers, and my team within BBRO. And it will have the dashboard on the BBRO website. So if you've never used it, it's there to be used. And as ever, go onto the website. That information should come in on a Monday and a Thursday, but depending on season and other things, information is probably being put on there on a daily basis. Now, technically, there could be up to 10,000 sugar beet fields, and we're only monitoring in 50. So it's not a carte blanche to go and spray if your closest site goes red and you've got aphids. It's an encouragement to go and check. Although none of us like counting aphids, it's not a great job. And hopefully we've got some technology coming our way into the future that may make that a little bit easier. But keep an eye on that, because that will be helpful to then encourage and check and keep an eye on the situation. And remember, the threshold is 1 green wingless aphid per 4 plants up until the 12-leaf stage, which then flicks to 1 per plant up until the 16-leaf stage. And then after that stage, it becomes uneconomic from all the work we've done historically for the need for spraying. So when it comes to spraying, what have we got in the locker room that will help you to minimise the risk? It's actually very similar to where we were 12 months ago. We have 2 active ingredients. We have acetamiprid, as in Insist, and we have flunicimid, either Topeki or Afinto, but only once. So that gives you 2 applications for the crop, which is positive, and as I said, hopefully you're not spraying for aphids until we get into May. But as an industry, I always think we need a minimum of 3 sprays. And what we are doing at the moment is going through another further emergency authorization process to gain an additional spray of acetamiprid Insist for the 2025 season. That's been going through with colleagues from British Sugar, NFU and BBRO for a few months now, and we hope that becomes available in April. Before the migration, but any emergency authorization product needs to go into the final slot. You have to use authorized products before you get to that situation. And if you've got 2 sprays of Insist, then the program naturally lends itself to an Insist, flunicimid Insist, because what we've got to do, and I'm acutely aware that aphids are very capable of developing resistance, and there is some evidence over the last 12 months of resistance to neonicotinoid sprays and treatments. So anything that we can do to minimise that is critical. So that will be the programme as we go into the season. Now, maybe in 12 months' time, things will be very different, because in 12 months, we're anticipating several other products coming into the market. They are not available yet as we stand today. If things did change, we'll let you know. But as I said, at the moment, you've only got those 2 actives. There's plenty of other work going on behind the scenes. So it is a main focus of the research that we undertake within BBRO. And Alistair will give you hopefully a nice update on all the work we're doing on genetics, working with the breeders to find those solutions. We continue to do plenty of work on other integrated approaches, such as the colour work that we know works, push-pull strategies, using things that smell like Christmas to try and push aphids away from the field, and one or two other things. But one of the other simple approaches you could adopt is using undersown barley. So the growers agronomists in the group, any of you use undersown barley on your crop? Yeah, several of you. Now clearly that principal reason is for wind blow and protecting the seedlings as they come through. However, one of the benefits of that undersown approach is we know aphids are attracted to the contrast between brown and green. If you remove the contrast, then what aphids tend to do is keep flying and don't land within the field. And we saw this really very nicely in 2020 when we had that epidemic year, when we had aphids coming in really early. By chance, from several fields that we had and that we got involved in monitoring, we were finding where by chance growers had used blocks of undersown and blocks where they hadn't, you could see massive difference, up to 50% difference in the level of virus yellows between those situations. We've got drone footage, it's really quite a powerful message and shows that camouflage works. It's also relatively cheap and a good way of managing virus yellows. That's why we've also been looking at colours and other strategies. The problem with the undersown barley approach, though, is what you must do if you are doing it, and for those of you who are using for windbrow, you'll know this, do not leave it in the ground for longer than it needs to be, because where we saw it had been used in a couple of situations, if it wasn't taken out early enough, we know beet doesn't like competition, and the competition impact of the barley was greater than the impact of virus yellows where we had it. So anything you can do to minimise that will be critical. But having said that, if we're not anticipating aphids coming into the crop until the middle of May, it may not be necessary to go down that route, because if you've managed to get your seed on farm, you've got it in early, if conditions are fit and everything else, then ultimately you may only need to use it for that wind blow effect. But always bear that in mind into the future as a strategy for using. Hopefully, if we don't see aphids until that later period, then virus yellows doesn't become the issue that it has done in previous years. And if this cold weather continues, and if we just bear in mind when we have used crews, I'm not sure we would have triggered it anyway, given what the weather we've had. So, any questions?